Hi. So it's been super long. It's been a long time. It's been a long time. Uh, and I'm not going to get into why a lot has changed for the better. Um, yeah. So, those of you who know what's going on, you know, and those of you that don't, maybe I'll share later. Maybe I won't. But that's not why we're here. So a while ago, some of you know, and I also said it on some chats on other people's channels that I was going to do an Isaiah study. And so I was weighing against Isaiah and Ezekiel. I wasn't going to do it in this format where you see me and I'm reading. I have to ask my husband how to figure out what he did with the computer to make the video editor go away or whatever. So the video maker, movie maker. Anyway, I'm going to be super off the cuff probably. And this isn't going to be a Bible study that I have any answers. And it's not even going to be very polished because one of all the changes, I haven't done this in a long time. You know, when you're out of sync with stuff, you got to get back in sync. So, in sync. So bear with me if you don't like that. That's okay. Then leave and you don't have to watch. But if you want to stay and study and read and think about Isaiah, then stay. And thank you. I appreciate a lot all the friendship made on YouTube and social media, actually, even though I don't like social media as the years go by. So what I'm going to do is just start reading. I think the reason I did this, I'll tell you in a little bit, was because I want to read the Bible differently. I don't want to read it with the history given to us. I want to read it with a different understanding that the timelines have changed, or have been changed, I should say, that there may be the missing 1,000 years, added 1,000 years. Not as much time has passed as we've been told from the Old Testament until now, even from Jesus's time until now, however you want to look at it. There's a couple things in here that might trigger questions like, did the millennial reign already happen? I'm still pondering that. I'm still listening to people's ideas and opinions in the scripture about it. I'm still balancing it all out, and that might come up. I did hear recently someone mentioned that, or someone posted a video. I told you this is going to be rough. Bear with me. It's like we're talking. You're just in my living room talking with me. There was a preacher from the 70s that said Isaiah is like the whole Bible condensed into one book from the beginning to the end. We'll see. I'm always questioning, though, for sure recently, who all of these rulers were, who, if their names were changed, where, in fact, even geographically, these places really are. Are they where we were told they are? Are they somewhere in the Americas? Are they somewhere in Europe? We've been told Middle East. We've been told Africa. And then we've been told, like, if you look into Acts, Spain. And even, like, when I did my Acts study, Acts 29, which is kind of a lost chapter, it said Paul and others went to England. Okay? So I'm keeping it all in my mind. It's all kind of jumbled up in there, so I hope I don't just, like, babble on and spit it out. But if, like I said, if you don't agree with me, that's okay. If I'm wrong, that's okay. You can tell me I'm wrong. You can tell me I'm right. You can share your own thoughts or understanding. All I say is I went to Bible college. I have Bible knowledge. But since God has given me so much further truth in my walk, there's further questioning. All right, so let's read it. Let's read chapter 1, and then I'll go back and tell you kind of what I tried to look up, but it kind of hit a dead end. So let's read it, the first chapter, and then I will read Wikipedia, what Isaiah says. All right, Isaiah chapter 1. Follow along in your Bibles. Okay, this is titled Rebellion of God's People. The vision of Isaiah, the son of Amoz, concerning Judah and Jerusalem, which he saw during the reigns of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, kings of Judah. There are a lot of names thrown around in the first chapters of Isaiah. Here's the vision. Listen, O heavens, and hear, O earth, for the Lord speaks. Sons I have reared and brought up, but they have revolted against me. An ox knows its owner, and a donkey its master's manger. But Israel does not know, my people do not understand. Now I have to say here, it's interesting, the wording here. He says sons, like family, like our Heavenly Father, but then he changes his tone and speaks as if they're animals. I just thought that was interesting just now. Okay. So you're my sons, but you're acting like an ass. Or even asses know their master. Anyway, verse 4. Alas, sinful nation, people weighed down with iniquity, offspring of evildoers, sons who act corruptly. They have abandoned the Lord. They have despised the Holy One of Israel. Now instead of Lord, I may say Yahuwah. That is the true name of the Father, the Most High. You can look that up yourself. If you want to say Yahweh, that's fine. I might say Yahweh. Okay. They have abandoned Yahuwah. They have despised the Holy One of Israel. They have turned away from him. Where will you be stricken again as you continue in your rebellion? The whole head is sick, and the whole heart is faint. From the sole of the foot even to the head, there is nothing sound in it, only bruises, welts, and raw wounds, not pressed out or bandaged, nor softened with oil. So he's harsh, and then he's becoming caring, and now it's judgment again. Verse 7. Your land is desolate, your cities are burned with fire. Your fields, strangers are devouring them in your presence. It is desolation as overthrown by strangers. The daughter of Zion is left like a shelter in a vineyard, like a watchman's hut in a cucumber field, like a besieged city, unless Yahuwah of hosts, so that's Yahuwah Sabaoth, had left us a few survivors. We would be like Sodom, we would be like Gomorrah. So the next title, this is the NASB, by the way, says before verse 10, God has had enough. Hear the word of Yahuwah, you rulers of Sodom, you people of Gomorrah. What are your multiplied sacrifices to me, says Yahuwah? I have had enough of burnt offerings of rams and the fat of fed cattle, and I take no pleasure in the blood of bulls, lambs, or goats. When you come to appear before me, who requires of you this trampling of my courts? Bring your worthless offerings no longer. Incense is an abomination to me. New moon and Sabbath, the calling of assemblies. I cannot endure iniquity and the solemn assembly. I hate your new moon festivals and your appointed feasts. They have become a burden to me. I am weary of bearing them. So when you spread out your hands in prayer, I will hide my eyes from you. Yes, even though you multiply prayers, I will not listen. Your hands are covered with blood. So it's harsh again. Wash yourselves, make yourselves clean. Remove the evil of your deeds from my sight. Cease to do evil. Learn to do good. Seek justice. Reprove the ruthless. Defend the orphan. Plead for the widow. And here's this well-known let us reason together passage. Verse 18, come now and let us reason together, says Yahuwah. Though your sins are as scarlet, they will be white as snow. Though they are red like crimson, they will be like wool. If you consent and obey, you will eat the best of the land. But if you refuse and rebel, you will be devoured by the sword. Truly the mouth of Yahuwah has spoken. Next title is Zion corrupted to be redeemed. Verse 21. How the faithful city has become a harlot. She who was full of justice, righteousness once lodged in her, but now murderers. Your silver has become dross, your drink diluted with water. Your rulers are rebels and companions of thieves. Everyone loves a bribe and chases after rewards. They do not defend the orphan, nor does the widow's plea come before them. Therefore, Yahuwah Sabaoth, the mighty one of Israel, declares, I will be relieved of my adversaries and avenge myself on my foes. I will also turn my hand against you and will smelt away your dross as with lye. Is that like melting? And will remove all your alloy. Then I will restore your judges as at the first, and your counselors as at the beginning. After that, you will be called the city of righteousness, a faithful city. Zion will be redeemed with justice, and her repentant ones with righteousness. But transgressors and sinners will be crushed together. And those who forsake Yahuwah will come to an end. Surely you will be ashamed of the oaks which you have desired, and you will be embarrassed at the gardens which you have chosen. For you will be like an oak whose leaf fades away, or as a garden that has no water. The strong man will become tinder, his work also a spark. Thus they shall both burn together, and there will be none to quench them. So that is not the end of desolation and destruction that we'll see in Isaiah. So even just as I was reading that aloud, it was very ebb and flow of, you have done this, Yahuwah is speaking, but you can be this. We can do this. I will do this. You need to stop this. And then it ends with Zion's triumphs, and then the enemy, the strong man, being judged and taken care of. So if ever I say things like melted, or when they talk about desolation, you have to pay attention to those things, because those things have already happened. And my question is, if they don't have evidence in the Middle East for it happening there, we certainly have it here in the Americas, North America, South America. I'm just saying, okay? So that was a short chapter. I'll probably go to chapter 2. I want to do 2 chapters of video, I hope. I don't want these to be like extremely long, because then it gets boring. So just, let me see. I'm going to look at my own notes here. Okay, let's read about, I looked up Isaiah on Wikipedia, and there's even a picture from the Sistine Chapel, I guess. But you can look that up yourself. I guess Isaiah is up in the Sistine Chapel ceiling. He looks like he looks like some actor, but I can't place whose name it is. That's why I wish I had a different format. But anyways, I'll get to that later. All right, Isaiah means Yahuwah is salvation. 8th century BC. So this is 767 to 686 BC. I'll speak on that in a second. Remember, this is Wikipedia, so take it with a grain of salt. This is just what they wish want us to think. Within the text of Isaiah, Isaiah himself is referred to as the prophet. But the relationship between the book and the actual prophet is complicated. The traditional view is that all 66 books of Isaiah, 66, were written by one man, possibly in two periods between 740 BC and 686, separately by approximately 15 years, and that the book includes dramatic prophetic declarations of Cyrus the Great in the Bible. This has a footnote. Cyrus the Great was the founder of the Achaemenid Empire, king of Persia, venerated in the Hebrew Bible as Cyrus the Messiah for conquering Babylon, liberating the Jews, acting to restore the nation of Israel from Babylonian captivity. Another widely held view is that parts of the first half of the book, chapters 1 through 39, originated with this prophet, interspersed with prose commentaries written in the time of King Josiah 100 years later. And that remainder of the book dates from immediately before and immediately at the end of the exile in Babylon, 2 centuries after the time of the historical prophet. So this is a lot of information. Now, if you want to look on Wikipedia, there's different interesting paintings of Isaiah. And this is the other thing that gets me. I'm trying to think of these artistic depictions. Where did they come from? And why were they made? And which ones are true? So there's a painting from, there's a Russian icon, and there's another painting, and they're always with the little baby cherubs, which aren't what angels look like anyways, but they're always talking to those fat babies. If you want to check out some of my shorts, I have one about that shows a lady with some cherubs listening to her read or something. Anyways, so here's where it gets tricky. I, for one, am questioning, are any of these names that are mentioned changed? Are these areas geographically the same areas that we know of today? Or are they hiding something else? So I'll just read a little bit more. So the Isaiah prophesied during the reigns of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, Hezekiah, kings of Judah. He may have been a contemporary for some years with Manasseh. Isaiah may have prophesied for as long as 64 years. Isaiah's wife was called the prophetess, according to other interpretations, modern interpretations, because she was endowed with the prophetic gift like Deborah and Huldah, simply because she was the wife of the prophet. So there's different names. There's the kingdom of Israel, Samaria, the Assyria, Sennacherib, which might be known to some of you. I don't know too much about this. I haven't studied this since college. So yes, Egypt is mentioned. Anyways, so I'm going to stop there with Isaiah. There's a stained glass window of him in St. Matthew's German Evangelical Lutheran Church. Anyways, so I looked up just to compare or just to get an idea, but like I said, it kind of led to a dead end. I added on a 1 to 767 and 686. So it would be 1767, 1686, and I'll start actually from France. I mainly looked up France. I couldn't find anything on Egypt. I couldn't find anything else. Any of those, any extra information, I guess I could say, on the Middle Eastern countries and their history of rulers. I couldn't, Egypt was so, as much as Egypt is the highlight of ancient history, there's not much there besides the common names we've heard of. And it was very hard when I added the 1. That's my point, is when I added the 1, when I started questioning the narrative, that's when it got tricky and it didn't lead anywhere. It was so ambiguous, it was just not there sometimes. So That's why I'm thinking, what is with this? Babylon, Assyria, Philistia, Moab, Syria, Ethiopia, Egypt, Edom, Arabia, Judah, Tyre. But yet we have plenty for European rulers. So that's what I looked up next. France, I found mostly, it was called the Capetian Dynasty. House of Bourbon was from 1589 to 1792. That's a little past the 767 and 686, but nonetheless, it's good to just figure it out. So here we're getting closer. William and Mary, we've heard of them, 1688 to 1694. James II, of course, 1685 to 1688. There was a period called the interregnum, which I found on Wikipedia also. And I'm not using Wikipedia like, ooh, go to Wikipedia and learn history. I'm just saying, let's see if we can see any comparisons, or commonalities, which I kind of did. They have the same historical events, or even just the wording. You know, words are spells, so it kind of gets tricky. If I don't make sense, you can leave now, but I'm just talking. It's just for me and you. Like I said, comment below. Or share this video and maybe someone else knows the answers. Okay, so interregnum means between reign, obviously, okay? Interim, the interim, interrupted. Okay, the period between the execution of Charles I in 1649 and the arrival of his son Charles II in 1660, which marked the start of the Restoration. During the I'm sorry, this is a weird word and I keep mixing it up, interregnum, England was under various forms of republican government. And then they just go on and talk about that, which is super boring. Okay, and then it gets a little bit interesting here. Okay, life during the interregnum. After the sorry, excuse me, I haven't had enough coffee today. Parliamentarian victory in the Civil War, the Puritan views of the majority of the Parliament and its supporters began to impose on the rest of the country. It was a Freudian slip. Countries are companies. The Puritans advocated an austere lifestyle and restricted what they saw as excesses of the previous regime. Most prominently, holidays such as Christmas, Easter were suppressed. Interesting. Pastimes such as theater, gambling were also banned. However, some forms of art that were thought to be virtuous, like opera, were encouraged. Okay. Now there's a little section. Jews in England. Rabbi Manasseh ben Israel met Oliver Cromwell in 1655 in order to discuss the admission of Jews into England. Cromwell did not agree to all the rights that Ben Israel requested, but the opening of Jewish synagogues and burial grounds was tolerated under Cromwell's protectorate. The Jewish faith was still not practiced openly in England since Cromwell's move had been so controversial and many in England were still hostile towards Jews. Life for Jews in England improved, something popped up, in that they could no longer be prosecuted if caught worshiping, yet discrimination continued. There's a little side note here. Let's see what it says. History of Jews in England goes back to the reign of William the Conqueror. Although it is likely there had been some Jewish presence in the Roman period, there's no definitive evidence and no reason to suppose that there was any community during Anglo-Saxon. It stops there during that time. Okay. I thought that was interesting. The word restoration was used, and also the main article is called Resettlement of the Jews in England. History of the Jews in England starts in 1066. I'm just trying to see if there's any other. 1168. Trying to see if there's any correlation to numbers, dates here. Not that I can see. Early history, Synod of Oxford, Statute of Jewry, Edict of Expulsion was in 1290. Now remember, we have to also formally solidify the thought that the Ashkenazi Jews are not real Hebrews, okay? And that's a whole different study. So if that is what they're referring to, that is what they're referring to. If there's a connection between the Old Testament and the true Hebrews, and then they switched it to saying the Jews, and they are the same people, then there's something there. So anyways, enough with that. I'm just going to go to chapter 2, and we'll be done, because this is about as long as I want it to go. And I won't be this lengthy for every video. It's just kind of an intro, you know, to get our wheels turning. Okay. Let me get chapter 2. I'm sorry about this format. Okay. I'm going to stop saying I'm sorry. All right. So here's an interesting title, Yahuwah's Universal Reign. I think we know what that might mean. Coming up, the word which Isaiah the son of Amoz saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem. Now it will come about that in the last days, the mountain of the house of Yahuwah will be established as the chief of mountains. I thought that was interesting too. Like, there's a definition of a holy place on high that everyone will know about. Okay. Will be raised above the hills, and all the nations will stream it, or stream to it. And many peoples will come and say, come, let us go up to the mountain of Yahuwah, to the house of Yahuwah, the El of Jacob, that he may teach us concerning his ways, and that we may walk in his paths. They're physically going to go there. For the law will go forth from Zion, and the word of Yahuwah from Jerusalem. And he will judge between the nations, and will render decisions for many peoples, and they will hammer their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation will not lift up sword against nation, and never again will they learn war. So they're using their weapons as tools. Come, house of Jacob, and let us walk in the light of Yahuwah, for you have abandoned your people, the house of Jacob, because they are filled with influences from the east. But are we thinking west? East, west? Depends where you are in the realm. They are soothsayers like the Philistines. They strike bargains with the children of foreigners. Their land has been filled with silver and gold, and there is no end to their treasures. Their land has also been filled with horses, and there is no end to their chariots. Their land has been filled with idols. They worship the work of their hands, that which their fingers have made. So the common man has been humbled, and the man of importance has been abased. But do not forgive them. Enter the rock and hide in the dust. From the terror of Yahuwah, from the splendor of his majesty, the proud look of man will be abased, and the loftiness of man will be humbled, and Yahuwah alone will be exalted in that day. A day of reckoning is coming. That's the next title for verse 12. For Yahuwah Sabaoth will have a day of reckoning against everyone who is proud and lofty, and against everyone who is lifted up, that he may be abased. And it will be against all the cedars of Lebanon that are lofty and lifted up, against the oaks of Bashan, against all the lofty mountains, against all the hills that are lifted up, against every high tower, against every fortified wall. Are you getting a picture in your mind based on other things we know besides the mainstream history? Verse 16, against all the ships of Tarshish, say that 5 times fast, and against all the beautiful craft. The pride of man will be humbled, and the loftiness of men will be abased. And Yahuwah alone will be exalted in that day, but the idols will completely vanish. Men will go into caves of the rocks and into holes of the ground before the terror of Yahuwah and the splendor of his majesty. When he arises to make the earth tremble, in that day men will cast away to the moles and the bats, their idols of silver and their idols of gold, which they made for themselves to worship, in order to go into the caverns of the rocks and the clefts of the cliffs, before the terror of Yahuwah and the splendor of his majesty, when he arises to make the earth tremble. Stop regarding man, whose breath of life is in his nostrils, for why should he be esteemed? Okay. So, that was an interesting chapter too. I'm thinking specifically, if you want to know, and if you disagree, that's okay too. I am thinking more and more about the Americas, Canada, United States, Mexico, South America. Yeah, there's a lot of evidence for that. There's a lot of evidence for around the world, high towers and walls destroyed. And I'm not just talking about castle ruins in Scotland. You know what I mean. I'm kind of being ambiguous, but if you're thinking and if you're searching, you get my gist. So if you don't get my gist, go look up where are the biblical lands. And if you don't get my gist, I won't be as ambiguous next time, and I'll just probably say it. Because I have no reason to hide anything or to not say what I think, or not say what I've learned. But there's a lot of geographical evidence for things that Isaiah is speaking about. And there's a lot of historical evidence, if you read between the lines, of things that have happened. But that mountain of Zion with the Almighty at the top is really intriguing to me. So let me know what you think about that. And I will try to do these videos weekly. Don't hold me to that, but blessings and thanks for stopping by. Bye.